guys, hope you're all doing well and keeping safe. Hopefully you all had a fantastic weekend. We're only 2 days away from learning more about what's coming with Title Update 12 on State of the Game this Wednesday, which I presume will land at the same time as Season 4. Now, I've already done 2 videos talking about my experiences within the game and what solutions the devs could put in place to make the experience better. These included various changes to talents, improvements to the summit, changes to mods, buffs for armor, and more. Now, in my last video today, I want to talk about attributes, the Dark Zone, loot drop quantity, and lastly, more additions to help with mods. With that said, the best way to support me is to watch all the way through. It really does help out, guys. And now that's out of the way, let's begin. Alright, so today I want to start off with attributes. Now, the first one is Armor Regen. Armor Regen, as an attribute, I think is in a pretty good spot right now, but only as a percentage based attribute. When I say attribute, actually what I mean is as a brand talent. Right now you can roll Armor Regen as an attribute, which gives you 4,925 as a maximum on gear. Now, some gear can give you percentage based common armor regen, like Bellstone Armory, which gives you that 1% for the 2-piece. And then you've got Memento, which can give you up to 3% when you're at 30 stacks. And let's not forget that with Momentum, it does last for quite a long time. I believe it's about 5 minutes. Now, these percentage-based attributes are vastly superior to the flat value provided by the Armor Regen attribute on gear. Now, even if you have no blues on your build as well. Now, with no blues, you'd sit around 720k armor. So having 1% would give you 7.2k per second, which is like 75% stronger than the flat value attribute you can put on gear. Of course, these are talent attributes, so you'd expect them to be higher than regular attributes, but the regular Armor Regen flat value is simply not enough, I don't think. Even if you stack 6 of them, you get just under 30k armor regen a second, which, you know, is going to take you more than 24 seconds to fully recover your armor if you had the bare minimum armor in the game. You know, why would you ever do that if you could, say, have an extra 26% crit chance, or 32% crit chance actually, or 72% crit damage, or 60% headshot damage? With how fast NPCs can kind of chew through your armor in this game, it doesn't make sense to ever choose the flat armor regen value attribute over really any other attribute within the game, except for maybe weapon handling, but even then I probably wouldn't do it. Whereas the percentage-based armor regen talent on gear does, because it scales with the amount of armor that you have. Let's say you put on 6 blues and you sit around 2 million armor. You could decide to run Memento and Bellstone Armory, because once those stacks are up on Memento, you'll be getting 4% armor regen a second with those 2 pieces on. Now, that's 80k, and that only requires 2 gear pieces to achieve, one of which being Memento, and that's a pretty strong piece on every build in the game, to be honest. Now, massive devs have recently talked about feedback, saying that it's often better for players to tell them what they don't like about the experience rather than offer solutions. I myself, I like to do both. So with that in mind, in terms of the armor flat value regen attribute, as I've shown, it is simply outperformed by every other attribute and offers very little in the way of value. Why would I give up 6 attribute slots for less than 30k armor per second when a red bar NPC on a heroic can do 1 million damage in 1 second? And I guess this goes back to my point on NPC damage and also how underwhelming armor is from my first video. My solution? Well, I don't really have one, to be honest. Something needs to change with the flat value though, and I do think this needs to be percentage based. With that said, it wouldn't make sense to change the flat value to just 1% armor regen, because then it will be possible to get 10% armor regen if you were to put Bellstone Armory on and Memento at 4 stacks along with 6 pieces of gear, and that would just be too strong. At that point, if you've got 2 million armor, you could get 200k armor per second, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be way too strong. That would be a balancing nightmare. So I don't actually know what the solution is here. I just know that this isn't working very well in the game. There's no reason to really have it, and the devs need to find a solution for it. So next up, and in my last video I talked about how mods needed some love. There are mod attributes that simply, they need to be removed at this point in the game, and we need to see a slight reduction in their drop rate. or possibly instead of dropping in place of other gear, drop them on top of other gear. I don't know if that's how the system works, but I think that is, and if it does work that way, I think it does need to be changed. Now there is one other thing that I think the devs need to do with Title Update 12 or in the future, and that's a mod library. And I've talked about this before. There's very few things in the game right now that I really like to see drop in the world, exotics being one of them, but one of those things are actually roles that I can put into my recal library, because I don't actually have mine completed, and I like the idea of having to find that stuff and complete something like a library. I actually enjoy this side of the game a lot, roaming the open world, getting drops, and where possible, updating my recal library. What is missing though is a mod library. Now I think Yannick has previously responded to this idea and said that it's not something that was on the table. I'm not sure when that was that he said that, but it makes sense to have this in the game, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting mods and not knowing if I already have a better one. The amount of times my mods fill up, I have to go through each one to find the ones that I don't need. Then I have to delete them by each skill as well, because you can't actually mass delete like you can of all the other gear slots and weapons. It's just a real ball ache, and it feels ancient in terms of usability compared to how gear and weapons work within this system. I think having a mod library would be ideal. It would bring it up to date with the other systems within the game as well, which would be great. One last thing about mods is that the most recent change to making mod slots on gear was kind of generic, was really, really great. There's no doubt about that. But again, for usability, the current system of just scrolling down a list of mods by color is frustrating to me. Having a system where it pulls up all 3 color types and your mods within those slots right away, so you can easily see what you have and navigate to that mod, would be way better than the current system that's in the game. Moving on, and let's talk about loot drop quantity. I've done numerous videos providing data on rainbow rolls following Title Update 11, coming to the conclusion that rainbow rolls drop about 10% or less of the time. This seemed to put rainbow rolls in a much better place than before, and for me at least, for my own personal experience, in a place where the devs can focus on other stuff. Quantity of loot drops are only good in some activities. Have you noticed that I mostly play control points? All of my background material in all of my videos is pretty much control points. Well, not only is the open world by far my favourite part about this game, control points feel like they give the best bang for your buck. They give you the best value for your time. For each control point run, I tend to get from 5 to 15 NPC drops plus the crate, which has 5 drops. It's possible to get like 20 drops per control point on heroic, which can take anywhere from 6 minutes to 15 minutes depending on the control point for me. And this doesn't include the times when an elite convoy turns up or other patrols, which is most of the time, and I really enjoy that. It's easy to get 25 plus drops from one control point run, and again, that doesn't include rogue encounters as well, which they do appear quite often on heroic control points, for me at least. And this is why I play in the open world most of the time and do control points. Not just the experience, but the amount of loot you get. You just simply don't get that amount of loot anywhere else, and in some places you literally get nothing. Now the summit loot drop quantity is pretty shocking. You can play on heroic and do 3 floors without any loot. I remember when the summit changes were made and EK1 did a stream, and his mate literally got, I think they were doing heroic, and I think his mate got no drops after like 5 floors or something like that. Now I don't know if the quantity increases as your difficulty increases, but if it does, then it doesn't feel like it. Legendary on the summit feels like you get no drops, and I've noticed the same when it comes to missions as well, to be honest. It's not quite to the same degree, I don't believe, as the summit, but it's noticeable when playing control points and then doing either of these other activities. As Massive suggested about feedback, here it is. My experience is that it doesn't feel rewarding in terms of loot quantity to do missions or the summit, compared to say control points. So why would I ever play these activities? My solution: increase the loot quantity in these activities as soon as possible. And if it doesn't already, I think quantity should also be affected by difficulty as well. Nothing crazy, but something noticeable as you progress through those difficulty tiers. Last but not least, and I want to keep this brief, I recently went into the Dark Zone to collect some Yao gear because, as you know, this is the only place to get it. Now I was thinking of doing a video of my experience within the Dark Zone, kind of like a montage of sorts, which I may still do. I don't know yet. I've got the footage, but I'm not sure. But I actually had an alright time in there, to be honest. I was expecting it to be really, really bad, which is why I wanted to do the montage. I probably enjoyed myself because I've not stepped foot in there for the best part of a year, probably more. I've had various, rogue encounters in there. There was a manhunt squad that the server defeated, and whilst it was nothing reminiscent of the Division, I enjoyed it more than I expected, to be honest, except I didn't drop any Yao gear, which was the whole point. Now, I'm not praising it because, on the contrary, what became abundantly clear is just how far the Dark Zone is from help. Like me on this one occasion, I'm sure there are people in this community who, they go in there every day, they have a great time, either solo or with their friends, but the Dark Zone needs some serious work. And I just hate seeing one of my favourite areas from the Division get so neglected here in the Division 2. I previously said that I think the devs should make the Division 3 PvE only, but the Division and the Division 2 combined have all the minerals to make a great Division 3 with both PvE and PvP elements. So actually, no. I'd want there to be PvP, but only if it's done right. Otherwise, there is absolutely no point. I cannot offer any solutions here for the devs. I'm simply expressing my experience. I could possibly go into specifics, but I've spent so little time in there, I feel underqualified. So devs, you can just check the forums because there's plenty of experienced DZ players who've given fantastic feedback on how to make this experience better, and I'm sure you could take some from them. One thing I will say is this: the Dark Zone to me feels like the open world behind doors with some PvP. There's nothing dark about it. But that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Tomorrow we'll have your usual vendor reset video and maybe another video in the evening. I'm not sure yet. And then Wednesday we're back with my State of the Game recap video, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for sticking around until the end, and until the next one, Epic out.